Welcome to the Dividend Talk podcast, episode 178, setting our goals for 2024. Dividend Talk is your number one podcast for all things dividend and stock market related with a unique European flavour. My name is Derek from Engineer My Freedom, and I'm joined with my co-host, European DGI. If you want to learn more about us, please visit europeandgi.com, where we have articles on dividend growth investing, including 30 European dividend aristocrats. While you're there, you might as well grab our free dividend portfolio tracker template. We also offer a premium dividend growth service featuring a bi-weekly newsletter, which includes stock deep dives, dividend stock cards, and access to our dashboard with over 130 dividend growth stocks. All of this is based on our very own dividend safety analysis. But enough about that. Please grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey, European DJI, the first podcast of the year. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's about time because I've been the whole week sick, and that's why we're also recording on Saturday. And the only way is up from here, I would say, right? So I'm really happy that we can have this podcast. I was looking forward to it. How much I like doing this. So, but how about you? How are you doing actually? How was the break for you?
Good. It goes by too fast. I think everybody says that. Goes by pretty fast. I still remember the last podcast we did, the live one. I actually really enjoyed that. That was something I think we got to do more often. But looking forward to this. Looking forward to the new year. We've set some goals, some things to reflect on from last year as well. So let's start 2024 off to a good note.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at where we are now, right, 178 episodes, I mean, this went beyond our initial goal as well, which was just, let's try it out. We enjoy just talking with each other. And I still don't see us stopping. I can easily see us making 400 or 500 episodes. God knows how far we get. So, and even we started together the Dividend Growth Compass service last year. It was also not in the goals at the beginning of the year, right? So even though we'll talk today about goal setting, one learning is you will never know how it goes in the end. So that's probably already a nice one.
Exactly. And look, I mentioned about starting the year off on a positive foot. But look, we have to talk about this, the news of the week, because it's a pretty big one, and it's Walgreens finally cut their dividend. I mean, I think for the last few weeks, we did a couple of episodes. I think one of them was companies that we would not like in a recession, and I can't remember, there was another episode, and I kept talking about Walgreens. They're prime for a dividend cut. The cash flow has skyrocketed down the way. And something had to come to a head. And look, they brought in a new CEO. It's an easy choice for a new CEO to make. He had to do it, and he has done it. He has cut that dividend, which is quite interesting because if you look at what happened to Intel when they cut the dividend, the share price went the other way. And you have a lot of people thinking, will the same happen with Walgreens? But to me, it looks like a totally different story.
Yeah, well, for me, the writing was just on the wall. I mean, you never know when they will do it. The same is with 3M for me. Maybe they can sit it out for a while. God knows. It depends really about, of course, on the commitment. And I also hope for all dividend growth investors that 3M will continue to do the dividend. But at a certain moment, if the company comes at risk from a cash flow point of view, which was clearly the case with Walgreens, you just have to stop with the dividend. Yeah, we are dividend growth investors, but we first of all want the company to be healthy.
Of course.
And that's the issue with Walgreens. And you know what leaves me such a bad taste? Several years ago, Walgreens has been buying back massively shares, right? And they were squandering all the cash on this 1-2% extra return that the CEO wanted to generate. and now it's biting them so hard because they have no wiggle room, and this annoys me really even more, right?
Yeah, that CEO was on his way out. Stefano Pes, I can't remember
Yeah,
the surname, but he was on his way out, and he I think he saw the writing was on the wall, and he wanted to squeeze every last drop to make him look good.
yeah,
And I think the new CEO that went in after him, poor Roz,
yeah,
I think was set up to fail. Personally, I think
yeah,
it was a sitting duck. I think they were just set up to fail, and now this new CEO, Mr. Sherwood, has come in, and man, he has got a massive job on his hands there.
yeah,
I don't know. It's we talk about turnaround plays an awful lot on this podcast, it
yeah,
seems, but this is certainly falls into that category. Is it a turnaround play, or are they just going to continue to slide? It's hard to know. But look, the questions everyone's going to ask me is, am I going to sell my shares? And at the moment, look, I'm going to share my thoughts with our newsletter this weekend. My thoughts. I have some strong thoughts on that, but I will share that in due course.
awesome. So, full disclosure, I never owned them. I've been looking into them in the past, of course, because they passed my screeners like a few years ago, but I always shied away from them because of the fact
Yeah,
that I couldn't see, and we spoke about that. I never saw the catalyst for this company, so I always wonder why invest in them. There are so many other alternatives at that moment in time, right?
yeah, and if I go back, and it's one of the first on my blog at the time when I was active writing my blog. It's one of the first companies that I wrote about. My first deep dive that I would have done myself, because if you remember, I started following
Yeah.
Dividend Growth Investor, and then I think I went into Glanbia, and then this was actually
Mhm.
one of the second or third companies, but it was the first proper company that I dug into, and remember, they were generating so much cash flow at the time. It was like 6 or 7 billion.
Yeah.
It was ample there. They were announcing Village MD. Everything looked rosy at that
Yeah.
time. But maybe I didn't do enough due diligence after the fact. So I've done that, done
Mhm.
my thesis, but I don't think I've covered my
Yeah.
bases after that, because I think it's quite clear from 2018 on,
Yeah.
2019, 2020, even 2021. It's quite clear looking at it. There was only one way they were going.
Yeah.
And the market finally caught up to them, and the share price has dropped significantly
Yeah.
as a result of that.
Well, I wish all the Walgreen shareholders a lot of wisdoms. It's not easy to make decisions now. But yeah, this happens. I've got my fair share of dividend cuts as well, and you learn from it and you move on, right? From that point of view. But look, hey, talking about difficult decisions, have you seen the courage that Carrefour is having at the moment by just threatening PepsiCo to ban their products in their shops? And we have Carrefour also here in Poland. I think it's called Carrefour
Yeah.
in French or pronounced. What are your thoughts about this?
For me, when I first saw it, the first thought that came to mind, it is the most typical French thing you could imagine to do. But in saying that, they're doing it for the right reasons. We know inflation went up, but
Mhm.
there's a case now. I think I've seen a chart. I don't know if it's on Twitter or somewhere, where they're showing that the effects of inflation and prices have actually started to decline in terms of material costs and raw costs. But we're not seeing that on the consumer end, because they're all
Yeah, the
they're
margins are
trying
going
they're,
up.
they're trying to make the margins even higher. But they've said they've had enough, and see. But it's hard to know where this will end up. What did they do? Not sell PepsiCo for a long time? What if their competitors, PepsiCo's competitors, start
Yeah,
doing that? They have to sell somebody to make money, because at the end of the day, Carrefour need to make money as well, and they
yeah.
can't not sell everyone. So it looks
Yeah,
like
it's the typical supply chain battle, and who has
yeah,
the most power in the value chain. And I mean, Ahold Delhaize has been doing this in the past with Coca-Cola as well. I think there were even some empty shelves for a while. So I think investors need to realize that this is usually the impact, that it will start with some empty shelves, and then who has the longest how I say it, breath here. That's what it comes down to.
yeah,
But usually this always ends up in a deal again, and then they move on. Yeah, I think it's good that supermarket chains, retailers fight back a little bit, because there's a lot of pressure in the media in these countries like France and Netherlands about these prices, right? and the supermarket retailers are the first ones to blame typically, because that's where they pay the bill in the end of the day, right? If they come at the
Of course.
cashier. So, but often it's just like those big brands like Unilever, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola that are doing a lot of price setting, and then they are merely kind of passing it on to the consumer. So yeah, and with all this pressure from society, yeah, it was about time that one of those big ones started to push back a little bit. Look, I'm a PepsiCo shareholder. I want them to have, of course, the highest prices here because it's beneficial to me. But I don't see this really impacting PepsiCo at all. I mean, it's such a well-diverse company. They are so globally spread. We're talking about one retailer in France. I know it's a big one, but in the end, and I'm also not worried about the spillover effect. It's nice for the headlines, but that's about it for me.
And then last piece of news I think you have here about ASML. They've started to ship their first high NA lithography systems, I think.
Yeah. So the before the new year, they start to ship it to Intel. So this is kind of the time that we said, like, it will take till 2025 for the turnaround for Intel to play out, right? Because then they will get the new machines now. They will have to design the chips for it and start showing that they can be back in a leading position. So it's really starting now. And I read somewhere that this first machine is kind of more like a demo machine, where that they will use to test to further improve the designs and everything, and then the next machines will be really there to produce on full speed. So I'm really excited about this. I still own a few shares in Intel. I've been sitting through the whole period with these, always with a turnaround story in mind. So not as a dividend growth stock. So in this really small percentage of my portfolio where I play a little bit around. And yeah, now it comes really back to the engineering competence at Intel. Yeah, because they can have a Ferrari of a machine, but if they can't drive it fast enough, then they're still screwed. Yeah, so now we will really learn about all of this stuff. But when we say shipping a machine, what we also need to imagine is that these machines are really huge. Yeah, it's not like you can just load them on a truck easily or something like that. So
I know the feeling. That's my gig, as you know, and we bring in, we call it a machine, but it's several machines compounded onto one, and we have to we have to try and install them. I mean, you know my pain. I think I've been 2 years nearly, and we're still installing these machines. So I could only imagine what the engineers in Intel have to go through. But hey, this is Pat's gig. He's an engineer, so this is where he needs to shine now, isn't it? This is
it. This is it. But I was also thinking the other day, like, if Pat Gelsinger pulls it off, then he has been really the guy in Intel that should win the Nobel Prize, because before he went to, which company was it again when he left Intel? He went to, wasn't it this
it's on the tip of my tongue. I have
VMware?
Yes,
Didn't he go to
VMware.
VMware?
Yes.
Yeah. And then they pulled him back again because he was also responsible for the last period of success, right? As an engineer, head engineer. And if he pulls this off now again, then he's just the guy in Intel over its history, right?
Yeah. But then I hope that a lot more of these technology companies will look towards more of an engineering head rather than operations. I mean, I think
not those Bob Swan again.
Yeah, I think operations have their place in the likes of Unilever, Ahold, where operations is more needed. But for engineering companies, come on, you need an engineer at the top. Because that's what's going to drive innovation.
Yeah, that's where it also went wrong with, in my opinion, with General Electric as an example.
Yeah,
it became too much MBA.
Yeah, cool. Look, it's one to look out for. I'm not a shareholder in Intel, but I'm still really excited to see what they were doing, to see if our thesis played out. And it's quite exciting to see ASML shipping them as well, especially if you're a shareholder of them, because these have been talked about for quite some time. So you could be earning on both sides there.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Maybe let's start then with the main topic of today, right? Look, it's 2024. Many people have been during Christmas analyzing, putting their portfolio performances together and everything. I'm still in the midst of writing my annual report. I think I will release it like somewhere in the second part of January because I've got some private stuff I need to sort out. But this is also a time where we're typically looking forward, right? Many people had the first week off this year. They're hanging around in the house, reading a book, whatever. But many of us as investors at this moment in time are walking around with a hot tea during the day and all the time thinking like, okay, what am I going to do this year? Yeah, well, from my learnings, what am I going to buy? What should be my goals? So, when you think about it, how do you typically do your goal setting in this, I guess, in this period of time?
Yeah, like I think you have to look back over the last year, and it does impact what you think about going forward for the current year. Because if I go back 12 months, I remember specifically saying I'm going to focus on high quality businesses, and the reason that I did that is in 2022 I was focusing a lot more on higher yield, and there was a lot more junk in there. But you're kind of perplexed from that, and then this year I move on a step from that. I'm like, okay, that's a bit too vague. What is a high quality business? It's easy to say that, but what does that actually mean? And what I learned from 2023 was actually you need to go with the flow, because at the start of the year it's like I want to invest only in the Johnson Johnson of the world, the Microsofts of the world, but that's not where the opportunity came up. So the
Mm,
opportunity were elsewhere, and if I was to stick rigidly to what I had said at the start of last year, I would have missed all those opportunities that came up that happened to be in the financial sector, which is one sector that I was not even looking at this time last year. So I think looking back the way always kind of influences going forward a little bit. But I think you have to try and be a little bit flexible in between as well. Because if you stick
yeah.
rigidly, I definitely would have lost out on lots of opportunities.
But you can combine both of that, right? Because, for instance, I had the same. I want to invest in more high quality.
Yeah,
So when the real estate investment trust sector went down this year, I invested a lot in Realty Income and Agree Realty. Yeah,
yeah,
those have really really solid balance sheets, enough room to grow. For me, if you think about the real estate investment trust sector, those two are top notch quality. I would even think at the moment that Agree Realty is probably even a little bit ahead of Realty Income when it comes to growth in total addressable market going forward, right?
yeah,
But I've been also investing in Johnson Johnson and Target. For me, these are all high quality businesses.
yeah,
Target, a dividend king, 50 years, can easily afford the dividend. They got pulled down a little bit because of all this theft that is going on there, right?
yeah,
But generally speaking, this is a high quality business, and so I've been doing this, but I also did it like taking the opportunities that are
yeah,
coming at me. I was not just blindly now going to buy everything that I feel is also overpriced. So to your point, when it's high quality, it still means at the right price.
yeah.
Yeah, but not anymore letting doubtful companies and turnaround plays coming into my portfolio.
Yeah, yeah, no, and no, I get what you're saying, but I think essentially what it is they are investing principles. They're not
Yeah,
specifically goals, because that should be your goal
true,
all the
true,
time.
true,
Really,
true.
like
Yeah,
I shouldn't set out this year I'm going to invest in high quality, because what am I doing next year? Not investing in high quality? No,
no,
every
true.
year the aim should be to that. So to me, it's just having a set of investing principles that I need to have, and some sort of checklist. Check, 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 check. Does it pass this? And then follow where the opportunity comes. And you're 100% right. You don't invest in every little single company that appears undervalued or there's blood on the streets, like what's that, MPW or so on.
Yeah.
You need to have some sort of investing principles that you stick to, and then follow the flow of the market, because opportunities are everywhere. Maybe not where you're looking, but they are certainly everywhere in the market.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I do a similar approach. I really go deep into looking how did I perform. I really want to see the underlying patterns typically in my portfolio. Because and that allows me again to look back at some stocks that were, for instance, negatively contributing to putting the patterns down or something like that. And then I also will look at those stocks and think like, hey guys, have you been really performing as I thought it would be? I look back at my investment thesis for this stock, and it allows me now to prepare towards May when I do my spring cleaning always.
yeah,
So the upcoming 3-4 months, I will have a small list of stocks that I think like, guys, you've been underwhelming me. Should I maybe kick you out of my portfolio? Should I trim you? Maybe I have a tier 2 stock that I say like, guy, you're not making it. I'll put you back to tier 3 or tier 4 and I start trimming you because for me, the risk reward is not anymore the same. Maybe I sell it at all. I ever lost my trust in it because although I'm a buy and hold investor, I'm more a buy, hold, and review investor. Let's say I'm not how is it sacred to my holdings. I don't want to fall in love with them. But generally, based on that, I specify really where I need to make my improvements as well in my portfolio, and then I just create SMART goals. And I don't know. I mean, I assume that people are familiar with SMART, but it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So, for example, in 2024, I will invest €1,000 each month in dividend growth stocks with average yield of 3% that have at least a safe dividend safety score, something like that. Yeah. This would be for me how I set my goals, and that's really sticking to it. And this is sometimes the hardest because you see things passing by during the year. You might have a weak moment, and you start drifting away from your goal. And that's for me always the most difficult one. I've been training my patience. I think the fact where I'm now is a result of having this kind of discipline, specifically over the last 4 or 5 years, not in the beginning. But I had to learn this really the hard way, let's say.
Yeah, I think SMART goals are clever, first of all, but I want to go back to your point where you said your buy, hold, and review, because that's essentially the part I'm missing, I think, is that review part. And I do it sometimes on some stocks, but not my whole portfolio, not every stock at the same time. And maybe because it's too large, I have 40 stocks in my portfolio. So maybe that's too much to manage. But it's
but you don't need to look at all. If you how I do it, yeah, just take the list of I have also 45 or 50 stocks now. Just take the list and look at those stocks that didn't hike their dividend or that did hike their dividend below your goal, the threshold you have. Look at those stocks and check why that is. Yeah, maybe their payout ratio is too high. Oh, does this mean it can't grow its dividend any further going forward like that, or all the time 1-2% hikes? If that's the case, most likely your thesis is not playing out, and most likely those 5-6 stocks that end up on your list could be candidates for refreshing because there are opportunity costs out there, and you could replace it for the same yield with a better quality stock. So you don't need to go through all 45. That's not what I do. I just look at those patterns. And for instance, the pattern is like, did it get a 6% organic growth over the year? No, just filter on all those stocks that didn't get the 6% and ask yourself why this is.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Thank you. You saved me some time. No, but that makes sense because, I mean, as I said, 40 stocks is quite a lot to go through. And obviously, if there's companies raising their dividend by 10-15%, I don't need to look at them. Why do I need to spend my time on them when they're
achieving your goals?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I know that makes complete sense. But yeah, I definitely have to add that piece into my regime, and I might do it sooner than May. I think I wrote down my goal is actually to do that before the end of Q1, and just to sit down and go through. I'm actually going to go through my whole portfolio in terms of dividend safety scores from our dashboard, because I trust that, and then I'm going to take it from there. But yeah, it's definitely one of my goals this year is to introduce that buy, hold, and review, and not review when it's too late. Review way in advance, because let's face it, Walgreens was staring me in the face, and I didn't act on it. I didn't do anything. I sat on my hands, and in the end, I was forced to make a decision. Well, I am forced to make a decision. Do I hold now or do I sell it now? At the end of the day, the dividend is still cut. So I'm in a worse position than I was back in November, say.
Yeah. So look, what's one of my biggest learnings for 2023 is that I need to evaluate and make quicker decisions on companies that are facing litigation. Yeah, I've mentioned this a few times before, but specifically when the litigation is exposed in America, in the American court system, because they have juries there, they don't necessarily follow the science. American court system is also much tougher when it comes to rewarding the people that are claiming. So for me, often I let those things play out. But what I've seen is over the years that I had several of those in my portfolio. If you're not quick enough, you easily lose half of the value of portfolio. Then the dividend cut comes, and then it will still lose a third or something like that, and then you're like 60-70% down before you know it within a year. And it goes initially a bit fast, and then it goes really slowly, and then again fast. It's like a staircase drop.
Yeah.
So you get enough time to review as well. But I still feel I need to be smarter and not wait out the verdicts necessarily. I can buy them back then again if needed. But I burn my fingers now on 3M, on Bayer, and I'm tired of it. I don't need all these litigations. And if you look at all these big companies, in the end, most of them are exposed at a certain moment in their lifetime about against this, because I'm sure that oil and gas companies will be in court and will be settling in 10-15 years from now when everything turns against it. Later, it will be meat producers that knew that meat is not healthy, and we find a link against cancer, which actually already exists. But once society turns against it, it usually bites those companies that are then out of favor. But I need to be better at it, quicker at it as well.
It's a tough place to be in, because once you sit on it and the company drops, let's say it drops 40%, you have a real decision on your hands there, because you've lost 40% of your capital sitting there, and if you sell that 40%, you're not getting it back. And yes, you might have received dividends, but it might not be enough to recover. So
yeah,
that in itself, and this is, I'm speaking from experience with Walgreens here, that in itself is enough to keep you holding on, because you're now holding on to hope. Okay, will the litigation be okay? If it is, they'll jump back up to my share price, and then I'll sell. But you're really on hope in there, and not using actually your logical brain and saying, okay, there's only one way this is going. It's not good.
But I've been practicing this. Yeah. So this year I've been selling 3M. Yeah, as an example.
Yeah.
And I've been selling them around $100. Yeah. So they're now at $108. So on average, right? Because when I wrote my article, I think they were around 110, 120. And I think that's when I sold the first time, something like that. So on average, let's say around $100. And so you could say, I lost 8%, right? Here. But on the other hand, I deployed that cash at that time into ASR, NN Group. And if I look at ASR and NN Group right now, I've got really nice pluses, on those investments.
Yeah.
So, which are actually, I'm looking now, so which are actually similar, plus a higher dividend at the when you think about the yield on cost. So, in my opinion, it's been doing me well, and I specifically for ASR significantly reduced the risk in my portfolio.
Yeah.
So, and because there's also a question if it will bounce back 3M then, right? Because it was already a bit struggling with revenue growth before all this litigation.
Yeah. I mean, you took your money out of one litigation and put it into another.
Yeah, that was with an N Group. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your credit, I mean, it wasn't the Dutch court. It's something that you are definitely more proficient with than I am, and you wrote a brilliant article on that. But yeah, there's a lot of things with 3M. It was a slow growing, like revenue would seem to have topped out. It wasn't moving anywhere fast, and then you obviously have this litigation on top of it. It's a dividend king, and I think that's where everybody gets hung up to get associated to aristocrats, the dividend kings. And Walgreens was 48 years, AT&T similar, and you kind of get in your head, they've been doing it for this long, they've gone through recessions, they've gone through all these things, surely they're not going to cut the dividend. But at the end of the day, when a business needs to cut their dividend, it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
So have you set any real goals for 2024 yet?
Well, my general goals are always the same. And that's where we got last week the question, how is it to be in the boring middle? Well, this is effectively the boring middle. So my goals don't really change. My initial goal that I set 9 years ago was to invest in dividend stocks with average yield of 3.25%, a 6% annual organic dividend growth, and over time a 50% savings rate. And that's exactly the goal again for 2024. I'm struggling with the 6% organic growth. The reason for that is I do have a few of those companies that have not been really hiking the dividends, like Omega Healthcare, but I depend still for a few percent of my entire portfolio on the dividend income there. So it's a high yield company with hardly any growth. I've got a really nice return on it when you look at it from a total return point of view, but I can do better there. So that will definitely be something. But I haven't evaluate my entire annual performance yet for all those patterns. So there's still a little bit of fine tuning to do on those those goals. I want to improve my savings rate a little bit this year. Last year, I really went a lot on vacation. I enjoyed so much, which is also good. We should live right. But I also think, like, I mean, I went out eating or ordering food almost every day. So you can imagine what the bills are there. And I want to do a bit more cooking this year myself. I started already with that. Fresher ingredients. I know more what I eat at the moment. I want to do a bit more, gain some muscle. I've been on vegan diet for a few years. I'm actively working out, but I do feel like I can gain some muscle. So sports and more fresh food, like going to the fresh market here in the mornings, which is actually also cheaper. So as a dividend growth investor, it should suit me well. And then just cook more natural. That's something I want to improve on, because specifically at the start of the winter after summer, I've been just eating outside everywhere, and at work there's a culture here to work to eat from the restaurant, but I could easily bring my own food and warm it up in the microwave at work, as an example. It's not so much even about saving; it's more about just knowing what I eat and improving on that.
Healthier lifestyle.
Healthier lifestyle. I'm now past the 40s, so I feel everything a little bit quicker in my muscles and everything. So I need to get a bit more flexibility and strength, I feel.
Yeah, good. And it's good to have some work-life balance as well. You can't always have work goals or investing goals. You have to have.
Well, I live now. Yeah, I live now. I don't live in 5 years from now. So if I want to spend my dividend income in 5 years, I need to be in a good space.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's me then. But how about you? What are your goals for the upcoming year?
Yeah, mine are not too dissimilar from last year in terms of I want to increase what I'm investing, again, which will increase my savings rate. For that to happen, I have to also increase my income either through work or other means, which I hope to do. But I do want to break that 100K mark this year. That's the.
How far off are you?
I'm about 12-13K off at the moment.
Oh, so that must work, right? That must be possible if the market doesn't crash like 20-30%.
Yeah, of course it's possible. Yeah, so that's the main goal. I just want to see even if it's just for a day, just to see it past that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the main goals. As we said, the first 100K is the hardest. I'm so close to it now. I just want to break through that now and play on. But those are my two biggest ones. I did mention I want to do my spring cleaning early this year. I'd say this year, probably for the first time. And I have an ambitious dividend income that I want to earn. I think I mentioned the last one. I was close to. I set 4,000 last year, which I earned before tax. But obviously I wanted after tax, so I've gone higher again on that. Which I don't know if it's achievable, but you have to have something to aim for. So let's see how that works out.
And then any option income for you? Are you considering that?
No, that's gone. So I didn't do anything last year. I've pretty much cleaned out most of the crap that was left over from that. I think I still have 2 companies, but they look like they're going bankrupt sometimes. But no, there's no option income. It's for me this year. Look, honestly, I have so much on with work, family as well. My 2 boys are heavily into sport. One of them plays for a professional club. I spoke to you about it. I have his first jersey there, as you can see, framed. But they keep me so busy that during the week they're training 5 days a week, nearly 6 days between them. And on the weekends, I'm traveling all over. So time is quite limited. And I've always set my overarching goal, and trumps everything, is that I would never miss a game or never miss anything that my kids are doing. And that always comes first. It comes before work, podcast, everything comes first. So
Yeah.
they keep me busy, and everything after that is secondary. So yeah, we'll see how it goes in terms of how I manage that. But there's a lot to do. Obviously, we have the podcast, we have the newsletter, and then work is mental busy, and then the kids. So I think that's enough. I don't want to burn myself
I
out
think
either.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget your wife either, right?
Oh well, she's with me with the boys. To be fair, she's in the trenches, doing that stuff.
Good.
And that's when we look, we spent 2 hours in a car this morning. We have to drive, and then we get them there because they have to warm up. So we have an hour. So we spend that hour. We go get coffee, have a chat, and actually, we're setting out our New Year's resolutions this year. And one she asked me was to be more present, so not on my phone answering emails or that. So if we're sitting down having coffee, the phone stays in the car. So that's
a good one. That's a good one to start with.
Yeah, I think so. And she will let me know if I'm not sticking to that. So it'd be an easy one to stick to.
Yeah, for me, I went also through that phase. Like the phones are really addictive, right? So I'm also fighting with my kids all the time. But I just put all these kinds of things on from Apple on the phone, like these time limits.
Yeah.
So it just gives me a big block, and then I can push it away. But I try to not do that, and it really helped me. So it helps also with being present. Yeah. I get what you mean.
It's just more time management, isn't it? It's just to better make use of my time when I have it. If I'm in work or if I'm outside, I just have to have blocks of time when it's just pure focus on that, nothing else, and then enjoy it when I'm away from it.
But I enjoy doing nothing at all. There's a Dutch term for this. It's called Nixon. And it's really awkward if someone asks you at work, like, what are you going to do? I'm going to do nothing. And they look at you like, how can you do nothing? But it's a term we use, and it means literally just kind of hanging around, doing nothing, no plan, no goal. You don't need anything. And I do this considerable amount of time still in the week, let's say, in the evening or something like that. I just do nothing, and I enjoy it, and it really helps me to de-stress and not anything. And my wife knows this term, so she's not surprised when I say this. And the kids understand this well. And I think this is really good because, like you, I've got a busy stuff, right, going on. Sometimes people think I'm all the time, how is it, tuned into investing. I'm present on social media, but I really choose my time. So I usually do a lot in certain time blocks, and then I'm just ignoring it at all for another time block, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think this is also important because if you look at the amount of people around me at my generation that have burnouts or something like that, I think people really need to, figure out a way to get less stressed. And well, I think investing helps with that, to have more financial security, and also to your point, manage time. Yeah, be present, live the moment.
Yeah, and that's the hardest. It was probably easier 30 years ago when there was no such thing as social media.
Definitely.
But right now it's a difficult kettle of fish because you have your phone or your smartwatch, or you have something connected to all the time. So it's harder to do now, of course, but I think it's definitely important.
No TV in your bedroom is also a good one, I would say.
I don't watch TV in my bedroom. I can't. I can't. If I go into bed, I'm gone. I'm asleep.
No, I'm not allowing it to enter it. Staying away from there.
So
good. Hey, but this 100K mark will come. I had the same. Like when I was at 95, there was a dip in the market, and then it took me like half a year. But then suddenly, like a small uplift again, and boom, I crashed the 100 mark. And that's really a nice mental moment. And I don't understand. Like, if everyone knows it, right? Why doesn't the government just give us 100K to start off with in life? Like, okay, hey, if you finished your, let's say, your university, or if you went into service in the military, as a reward, you get 100K, because everyone knows 100K is the hardest, and then you go on in life. Probably not affordable, but from the other side, countries are, they are printing money by the bushes, right? So they can give us 100K. It shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, it could be something more interesting than a pension at the end. Maybe they spend, it's like paying it forward. They paid at the start instead
Ooh,
at the end.
yeah.
Maybe that's one way to
Yeah,
look
and
at it.
I'm sure if you put it in just a regular S&P 500 ETF, you would also perform better over those years because you don't need to pay for those pension fund managers and everything. You don't need to think about bonds and underperform for more than a decade. So yeah, as long as
Interesting.
it cannot be investing in SPACs and crypto shit and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Probably only UCITS ETFs.
Yeah, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're screwed indeed.
We put it into healthcare REITs. They seem safe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Uh,
Hey, but we also asked a question in the last episode, like, what are the investment goals for 2024? And some people on Spotify gave us some answers. So, one of the listeners shared that, and I believe his name is VWEE90. His goal is to stick to the plan, buy on the dips, and focus on growing the dividend income in a sustainable long-term way. Good one. I would say make it a little bit more smart, but I think that's already in your plan. Then TGM Carty mentioned to break the €4,500 per annum in dividend income before Irish tax and continue to increase the portfolio size and to continue to add to the real estate investment trust portfolio. So it's a fellow one. And
yeah.
then we have Marcus. He wants to add €1,000 in yearly dividends. He started to invest again after some working and some difficulties, I think, and taking care of family and children. So really nice goals, guys. Thank you also for responding to that question, and I wish you all the luck. Stay tuned. Keep on listening to Dividend Talk. Will help you getting achieving those goals.
I like that one with the 1K a year because I think that was my first big milestone was 1K a year.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So yeah, look, I really hope you all reach your goals, but I'm interested in that one because that's the first step, the step on the ladder. And obviously we have a fellow Irish listener here. 4,500 before Irish tax is quite a considerable amount. In most cases, that's probably above minimum wage here as well. So you'd be living quite comfortable on that.
Yeah. Nice one.
All right, that's annual. Sorry, I thought it was
annual.
Annual. My bad. It's not above minimum wage. We don't down that little over here. Okay.
And then about, of course, our own podcast is the goals, right? So maybe a heads up to others. Last year I traveled to Dublin. Yeah, and wasn't the first week of January we did our goal setting.
It was close. Yeah, closed first and second week.
Second week, and now you will come hopefully at the end of January. I believe you still have to book your flights, and then we will do some further goal setting for the podcast again. But what has been inspiring me already a bit for goal setting, because we asked like on the podcast in a poll, like what type of investor are you? We got 68 votes, and 75% of them has a mix of strategies, and 25% has pure dividend growth. So we had in the past, we had Investment Talk, Connor introducing us into the world of growth investing. So we have had other guests on the show sometimes giving their investment strategy, and maybe we could do a bit more of that. Of course, the anchor is always around dividend growth investing. That's what we are here for. And I don't see myself really changing my investment strategy. But I think knowing that our audience actually has a lot of mixed investment strategies, we could once in a while have maybe another kind of opinion on the show that introduces us to another world. Like, for instance, high yield investing, pure high yield investing, right? Would be really interesting for us to have a guest around that. I think Dividend Bull, I reached out to him once, but I don't know how to get in touch with the person via email or something like that. That would be nice to have on the show this year. So I could see this one being one of our goals, to diversify a little bit into income strategies, let's say.
Yeah, I think so. That would be a good goal. Look, we need to get more guests on here anyway. I think we did ask for people's opinions on that as well. So let's see. I'll get over before the end of January, and we'll set up some serious goals.
Good. Hey, this is how we have been talking about goal setting, right? And how we approach it, what our goals are. Let us know what your goals are still. You can reach us via email, go to the Facebook group. Maybe we should just all together put one post on Facebook, share our goals. I think it could be really inspirational for all of us. And yeah, and that's also one way of how we can keep each other accountable. And I think that also really helps, right? By being out there, announcing it to the rest of the world, you have people that can help you be accountable. So it really helps with achieving this.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed this part, but I think it's now time to go to the listeners' questions.
Yeah, of
And
course. And we'll start with Centrino. He's asked you a question, so specifically
Mhm.
for eDGI. For an 18-year-old person, only has a small amount to invest monthly, say something like €50, what strategy would you use?
So, general philosophy is always like, when you're younger, invest in growth stocks because you can have a higher tolerance for risks and such. I've been thinking about this quite a lot because last week we got this question about like, you know what, why not invest in ETFs or in growth stocks and then just switch after 15 years? And you made a good point, like how can you switch easily if you got anchored into a certain strategy, right? Here. And I was even thinking more about it later because it suggests often when we get this question that, for instance, growth investing would outperform dividend growth investing. I haven't seen evidence of this. When I look at data, I often see that the dividend aristocrats outperform over the long term the S&P 500 and other investing strategies. Yeah, because we look often at the Microsoft of this world as a growth stock or something like that. But think about all those growth stocks that are like space. Yeah, the spec with Virgin Galactic. Where's it trading now? Many of those stocks went really like 80% down and are still hovering around there. So how to pick the right growth stocks is not easy. You're then also suggesting that you can kind of outperform the market over a longer term span, which I also struggle with to believe. I believe there are some people that can do that, but I think it's still a minority. So, when I then get this question from Centrino as an 18-year-old person, I think the age really doesn't matter when I start reflecting on this.
Mm.
I think it is really about what does the person want to achieve in life. It's hard to figure that out at 18. But you can also have a higher tolerance for risk in dividend growth investing. You can probably just invest more in low yield and high growth to some extent. Because you can recover your mistakes easier afterwards. But I would still probably I would advise my son at 18, if he wants to have more freedom in life, to go probably more for a passive income investment strategy and set up the portfolio around that. And the question is here, like, would you take an ETF or something like that? If I would gift shares, I would probably do it in the ETF. But in Europe, again, that's difficult. But I would actually encourage an 18-year-old person to spend some time and do some stock picking and have the learnings early and also fall in love a little bit in the beginning with their holdings, make the mistakes, because then when they start really earning money at 25 or something like that, they've got already 7 years of history of failures behind them.
Yeah.
Imagine what the compounding after that can do.
Yeah, it's quite a funny one because you're saying when you're young, you can take more risks, and you can, but you're also suggesting you can be a little bit more reckless with your money. That money doesn't matter, and that's not true. No matter what age you are,
Mhm.
like if I was to advise an 18-year-old person and they want to take more risk because they want to get wealthy faster, my
Mhm.
advice would be simple: start a business. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no quicker way to wealth. If it takes off and you have a successful business, there's no quicker way to be wealthy. Start a business. But when it comes to investing, I would be more conservative about where I put my money. And you made a very good point. I mean, growth investing can outperform dividend investing, but it depends on the stocks you pick.
And dividend growth investing can outperform growth investing
Uh,
over a long time
depending on
span.
the stocks you pick.
Yeah.
But again, dividend growth investors have a smaller universe to pick from. So
Yeah.
our universe is narrow. When you're a growth investor, it is quite. How do you know what to pick? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it. I mean, same as us. You study companies, yeah, and you hope to take the right one. But with growth investing, I think you're anticipating more on large growth, which can be very stretching, but usually you pay up on really high valuations at the same time at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And that's why I mean, like, the risk and reward are different. But if you then have a basket of stocks, you will definitely fail on some, but you might also be successful. But then over time, it kind of balances it out. And then the question is, are you outperforming whatever your benchmark is, or are you reaching your goals? Yeah, that's for me even the most important.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's some very good advice. I mean, for 18-year-olds, actually, my son came to me 13, 14 this year, and one of his goals this year is to earn €100 in dividend income. And that he's 13. And I said, I mean, do you not want to take a risk? And he was like, no, I don't. I want to know where my money is, and that was his goal. But
Yeah.
obviously, he's listening to the podcast and looking up to me, so he's influenced in some way.
Yeah.
But I don't push that on him. But he's 13 and he wants to do dividend investing, so why not? If you can do it at 13,
Yeah, exactly.
you can do it at 18. Oleg has asked us, do you have a certain percentage of cash available if in case there is a crash?
No, not anymore. I had it in the beginning of our podcast. I called it my war chest, but I've been waiting for a crash for so many years and never came. So I just invested it, and it has been compounding for me since then.
I don't either. I did have money aside as well, but that's all. It's gone like the wind, as they say. Gordon has asked us, as a thought experiment, do you think a high yield portfolio consisting of tobacco, REITs, BDCs, covered call ETFs, midstream stocks, and high yield insurance could work, generate income over a long period of time?
I think it can work. I don't see why not, but it is again about what kind of, this should still be in a healthy state, in my opinion. It can work. You will probably get a little bit less growth in dividends. I would even argue, like, if you know that you're like 70 years old or something like that, you want to get maximum cash out of your life to fund your lifestyle. That could be even more interesting, specifically if you don't want to hand it over to your relatives later on.
Yeah. Read Gordon, read The Income Factory. I think it's what you're talking about there. It's pretty much a high yield, as European DJI said, very little growth. And not to say there's no growth, because you have, say, British American Tobacco in there, or companies like that. But as a general rule of thumb, that's going to be a high yield, no growth portfolio. Of course it can work. Does it come at risk? Of course it comes at risk, but if you can navigate and manage that, it can definitely work. As I said, check out Income Factory. It'll be quite similar to that. People do use that quite successfully, and some people use it not so successfully. So Jean Christopher has asked us, where do you look at balance sheets of European companies? He was looking at Louis Vuitton's balance sheet on a different website, and the debt, free cash flow, payout ratio are different on different sites.
Yeah, that's correct. And coincidentally, I was also looking in Louis Vuitton. And what many websites don't do is they don't put the capital lease obligation into the long-term debt. So then the ratios go really out of whack. And really simple, you got to look it up in the annual report and the quarterly report. So in our dividend growth dashboard, I adjusted all the numbers when I found this out. But there's all manual adjustments. And I think the fact is that I don't know who's entering this data into the APIs. I have a feeling that these are people somewhere without an education or something like that, just open up a report, copy it, and slash it in somewhere without knowing what they are doing. Yeah, without an accounting degree or something like that, probably really cheap labor somewhere. And that's why in Europe, you really need to watch out with data and go to the source, and that's the investor relations website.
Yeah. Adam has asked us, do you consider liquidity / popularity in your investment thesis? For
Yes.
example, okay, go on, you can.
Yeah. So yes, I because if you have small caps, you really need to watch out. Like, I've got Chesnara and Defama. These are small caps, and I know that if shit hits the fan, it will be almost impossible to sell them, because there are hardly there's hardly any volume going on there on a daily basis, like maybe 100 stocks per day or something like that, maybe 500,000. So it is important, and that's why, for instance, I always invest native in the stock market. So when I buy a European company or something like that, I buy it, for instance, in England, when it's a British company, and not in, I don't know, in Germany or something like that, because you can do this right there, often listed on other stock exchanges. Also, there the liquidity is different. So I always go to the native where it's traded the most.
Okay, good. Hussein has asked us, what are your red flags when you're reading at 10K? Yeah, look, he's mentioned a couple of things there, like laser focused with a smiley face and impairments, goodwill write-off. I don't think you're too far off. I mean, goodwill, we spoke about that. I think we've done an episode on that before, along with impairments. But you're really just looking out. I think IBM. If you actually listen to a podcast on IBM, I think we done. It was a how to spot a company in decline or something like that, and
Yes.
we go through all our red flags in that, and you're looking at adjusted figures versus reported figures and the gap in between them. But I don't think you're too far off with what you're saying, Hussein. Impairments, goodwills, pretty much the big ones, and I'm more and more trying to read what the CEO is saying and see if it matches with what the figures and the footnotes are saying, because sometimes it does, and then sometimes it's like they're living in fairyland. Like we've had a good quarter here, and then you look at the figures and it's not. So
I'm really picky on that one. If I see this happening, I get so annoyed already. Like if we know that the earnings were bad, but then they put everything in the adjusted and they still tap themselves on the chest how great they are. That's for me a typical example of a CEO that I can't trust. And we have seen the real CEOs, like even people like Satya Nadella. He has got all the tailwinds, and he still articulate when he feels like that something, for instance, could have been better. They don't need to say it was shite, but at least say like, okay, guys, this is an area where we need to look better into, or something like that. That makes sense for me, right? Here. And for me, because I've seen too many charlatans over the years that were all the time talking good, and they don't need to sell us the stock, right? They should just work, perform, and then you also build more credibility. And if you have a good explanation, because it shows that you're on top of things, yeah, everyone can make mistakes. Also, CEO can have a bad quarter or something like that. Okay, enough. Let's move on to the next quarter.
Yeah, I mean, just be honest about it. I mean, if anyone spends enough time reading the numbers, they'll figure it out anyway. So
yeah, exactly. So why try to fool them? It only works against them. I mean, we should really give a CEO class, like an onboarding. When CEOs get the job, they should come to you and me and do an onboarding training and how to properly communicate with us.
Yeah.
We'll eat them alive otherwise.
Yeah, but look, to answer your question, there is quite a few red flags, and to go through this in depth, I think we had a whole show on this. So look out. I can't remember the episode, but look out for the one called "How to Spot a Company in Decline," and we list all of our red flags on that episode. So check that one out.
Yeah.
Andrew has asked us, with the market currently so high, do you see any sectors that have value? Are REITs still attractively enough priced?
So I think so. I think real estate investment trusts are still attractively enough priced. They're not cheap anymore, but I also don't see it as overvalued, probably more fairly valued if I look at the stocks there. I would say pharma is still in a good spot, the healthcare and specifically the pharma sector. I still think insurance companies look relatively okay. Again, not so undervalued anymore. It's a market of stocks, not a stock market. But I would argue that the cheap prices we saw, like in late November, that is, of course, this candy store has a little bit less candy on stock now. Yeah. Let's say like that.
Yeah, I think you're bang on the money with real estate investment trusts. I think the easy money, the low hanging fruit is gone. And like you, I think they're still fairly valued. They obviously, look, real estate investment trusts cover lots of different subsectors within them. Yeah. So if you look at office REITs, for example, they're probably still going to be attractively priced. But they have a lot more headwinds against them, so there's a lot more risk there. But I think the easy money is gone there. In terms of sectors, I don't know if a sector has revealed itself yet as to what's going to be this year is going to be the one that's going to give us a little bit more, how would you say, candy. I think, but yeah, farmers probably at the moment, and there is some, as I said, real estate, but not many. Andre has asked us, have you ever used shareholder vote exchange?
No, but actually, until this question, I didn't even know what it meant. So I looked it up, and to my surprise, you know what you can do? You can sell your voting rights there. So it's effectively literally an exchange in voting rights. So if you own 100 shares, I don't know, in Texas Instruments, you can sell your voting rights and earn some money from that, without selling your shares. So it's just your voting rights. Very interesting, don't you think? And you can also buy them if you want.
Yeah, because, okay, have you ever, how often do you vote?
Yeah, but that's the narrative on the site. The site says like, hey, most retail investors don't vote. So if you don't vote, why don't you sell your votes then? That's kind of the idea.
Huh. That's interesting.
Very interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. That's very interesting. But is there any risk to your shares? What's the
I didn't do due diligence, right? But just the concept is very interesting to me. Now the question is like, will I do it? I don't think so, but I was hoping that you would maybe test it.
let me be the guinea pig. But I mean, look, the first question that came to my mind is I can't remember the last time I voted on something or do a vote. So it's definitely an interesting thought.
Most shares we can also not vote if you hold them with the hero. Yeah, usually you can vote them with interactive brokers, but with the hero you never get the question to vote really.
Yeah. So look, I wonder what the drawbacks or what the risks are. And Andre, if you do this, please email us or let us know somewhere what your experience is, what the drawbacks are, what the risks are, because that's what I would be keen to know, because I would definitely be interested in trying that out, at least if the risk was minimal. But I don't fancy giving away my votes and then all of a sudden I lose 100 shares of
exactly.
Whoever, you know? So.
Yeah, the company has decided to claw back all the shares they once issued at half the price. Yeah. But look, if listeners are interested in this, Google for shareholder vote exchange and look it up. It's quite an interesting concept.
Okay, back to Centrino. Centrino has asked us another question. This one is for me. He's heard that I've started buying UKW, which is Greenco UK Wind, which is a closed-end fund that I've spoke about. What is your thesis to buy the stock? What's the dividend yield? What's the safety score? And what is the average dividend growth rate? So first of all, as I mentioned, it's a closed-end fund on the London Stock Exchange, and pretty much my thesis is that Europe is moving to a net zero carbon emissions rate by 2050 is the new plan. They are moving. I think 2030 was the initial plan, but 2050 is when it wants to go to zero. Being in this, well, not directly in that field, I was for a period of time, but being in that field directly, I know that renewable energy, particularly wind, was high up on that list. There's lots of grants going around at the moment on that as well. So Greencoat have two kind of closed-end funds. You have one that covers all of Europe, and then you have this one specifically for Ireland and the UK. I chose Ireland and the UK because that's where I'm more comfortable geographically. I know the locations, I know the electrical output, I know the grids, I know everything. Europe is a bit more complex, but you can buy both. They both give similar yields. But pretty much my thesis is based on that. Renewable energy is increasing. We're trying to reduce all the old style electricity generation that we're doing, and while it's not 100% stable, it does have a place in the grid. Obviously hydrogen will be there, solar will be there, and there's lots of different ones that will be there, but certainly in Ireland and England, wind will play a big part, and the grants help. In terms of their annual dividend growth, they increase it with inflation. So whatever the inflation rate is at the end of that year, they increase it by, and they've done that over the last whatever, whenever they've been founded. I can't remember when they were founded exactly. I think it was 2011, 2012. But they've done it every single year, so whatever the inflation rate is. So it's kind of like a hedge against inflation. They've done that quite successfully. I believe their dividend is safe. They have a clear policy to distribute that, and they've stuck to that plan exquisitely, I would have to say. And their management, the management team that own them, they are very rigid. They're a good team. They know what they're doing. They're very experienced in that area, so I trust them. But yeah, it's an interesting company. As I said, if you want something in the renewable space, I bought Iberdrola as well recently for that reason. You did an excellent article on them. I didn't realize there was so much in hydrogen. And I might look for something in solar eventually, because I do really believe in renewable energy. And we're still a long way off making the grids, I would say the electrical grid more stable on those technologies, but I think it'll get there.
So if you want exposure then to the materials sector, there's a question from Dividend X. What are your thoughts about Albemarle?
Albemarle. Do you know what? I don't know a whole lot about this company. I know they are. Let me get this straight. They were the lithium battery for electrical vehicles. That's what they. That's let me. I just want to check this. Yes, that's what they do. So they are the largest producer of lithium batteries for electrical vehicles. And again, that probably ties into something when you talk about renewable energy and you talk about this electrification, and we know cars are going more electric. The problem I have with lithium batteries is you can't dispose of them.
Yeah.
So I feel like I know they use lithium batteries now, but that can't happen forever, because when a battery fails, you take it out, you put it in a dump somewhere, it doesn't decompress, they've nowhere to get rid of them. So what happens in 10, 50 years' time? Unless technology has changed, but certainly when we studied this back in college,
Oh boy, but who will tell this to the Greenpeace activists that we use natural resources for EVs and electric transportation? Yeah, because we don't want to exploit our soil and take oil and gas out of the ground. So
yeah, and there is other types of batteries that they were talking about. I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember. It'll come back to me at some time. But essentially, it's like a gas, and it seemed like it was a lot more efficient because you can charge the gas up quite quickly, and you can dispose of this, whereas you can't dispose of lithium. So that's my big problem with lithium. But in terms of this company itself, as I said, I haven't researched into them. I just looked at their dividend history when you mentioned that. I seen lithium batteries, and that raised a little bit of a flag for me. They have a low payout yield, 1.18%. The dividend growth is also low, so it's 3%, around 3-4. So already that's a no from me. Everything is too low. But the payout ratio is extremely low. The payout ratio is only 5%. So obviously there's money there, there's cash there that they could increase that dividend or payout, but presumably they have to invest in R&D, and it's an ever-changing minefield, that sector. So they'll probably need that cash to reinvest into the business. But the dividend growth has been 29 years, which is quite astonishing as well. So fair play.
Yeah, nice.
LDev has asked us our thoughts on OXY. I think he's wondering what Warren Buffett sees in this company.
Yeah, so what he mentions more, right, is that it's about the Permian, 20 years of oil down there with break even of $40 barrel. Great CEO. The portfolio is only 5% of Berkshire Hathaway. He read the 10K and the reports, but he can't figure out what the heck he is missing. And I can tell you, I did the same. And this one is on the too hard pile for me. I can assess kind of the big oil and gas by looking at reserve and such, but this one is too hard for me. And I mean, look, LDVH, if you come to this conclusion, you know, it's like the same with some insurance companies. Some are just too hard to understand. Then just like you don't need to invest in them, right? We don't need to invest Buffett, because if you don't understand it now, it will mean you really need to dive even deeper, become a master in this industry. Is that worth your time? I would argue not, and I would just throw it on the too hard pile and not look back at it.
Next question then we got is from Dividend Yogi. And he's saying that famous investor Dan Niles has Texas Instruments as one of his top picks for 2024. He's also considering opening a position. What's our current take on Texas Instruments?
So look, I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't know what it will do for 2024. But generally speaking, I find Texas Instruments attractively valued. I know that they will have some free cash flow issues this year and also next year because they're investing heavily to get their fabrics up to speed to meet future demand. So they're really investing now for the future. I think we have more than enough time to get through this. Honestly, if you ask me to do fortune telling, I don't expect a lot from Texas Instruments in 2024. I expect it to be dead money. Usually the share price follows the free cash flow in this case, and it returns. I don't expect a lot of returns this year. They're still heavily investing also next year. But I see it as a nice period generally to buy on the dip and to continue building out the position. That's what I've been doing already in 2023, and I will continue to do in 2024.
Yeah, look, I think we also have a business breakdown of Texas Instruments. I can't remember the episode, but I don't think our thesis would have changed that much since then. I think it was only a couple of months ago. So I'd recommend listening to that as well. Dividend Yogi. MB has asked us about an Italian stock called Sembra, ticker symbol CMB, and it's on the Milan Stock Exchange. I mean, never heard of this company before, and you were tasked with having a look of it before we started, and
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Yeah. So they have a dividend track record of 12 years of dividend growth. So they cut the dividend in the great financial crisis in 2008, and then they were struggling with the dividend, let's say, till 2013. And since then, it has been growing. It is currently 3.8% yield. But what really is interesting, they have a total return over the last 20 years of almost 15% compounded annual growth, which is huge. And so, what is this company? I let it be introduced by you because you understand their business as such, right? So what is this, Sembra? What is it doing?
I mean, the numbers you are giving out there, I just can't wrap my head around it. These guys make crimps, right? And crimps are these little. Well, not little, depending on the size of the cable. But when you split a cable, you want to connect the cable, right? You take off the installation. You take off the installation, and you're left with copper underneath. And sometimes that's like a single strand, or sometimes it's loads of different strands. And the crimp sits nicely on top of that, and you squeeze it on, so it gives you a nice solid connection. There's no strands, loose strands anywhere, and it gives you a nice solid connection, and it prevents fires, and it's good practice. And you generally won't see them in houses, but you will see them in every single, if you have any factory, it'll be in every single factory across the world in their plants. Like, so it's basically crimps, like big or small, they do the same job. Like, they call them connection systems here, but I'm just flabbergasted. I mean, for me, and I said this to you before we started the show, for me, right, we talked about competitive advantages. These seem like easy things to reproduce. It feels like you could get a shop in China that could make these and sell them for a fraction of the cost. So I'm actually, I mean, I'm excited to look into this company. We've added this to our Excel spreadsheet because I think I'll do a deep dive on this, because they must be doing more than that. I can't see how they're getting these numbers just from lugs and crimps, and even if they sell the tools as well, it's mental.
Yeah. So thank you, MB, for sharing. But you can hear the excitement of kind of discovery of a proper looking business in our voice, and I think that's what it is. It meets the screener, and even it surprises us even more. So thank you for sharing, and we'll look further into it. Actually,
yeah. And look, I was an electrician for 10 years. I didn't know that this brand existed. So you think I would understand if the brand existed for something like this. So I use these products all of the time. As I said, I worked both on building sites where you wouldn't use them, but I also worked in industrial for a long time. And one of my main jobs was actually machine building and building out these panels. So I'd have to log everything, which is tedious, but it has to be done. And I never even heard of this company. So you can tell. Look, I'm quite excited to look into this company. The numbers you've given alone: 3.8% yield, 12 years of dividend growth, and their total return over the last 20 years is what, 15%. How can I not look?
Annually.
How can I not look into this company? It's right up my street. So yeah, thank you, MB. I'm definitely going to look at that before the end of quarter one. Whether I write for it in the newsletter or we share it on the podcast, I don't know yet, but it's on my list. I'm actually excited. So thank you.
Ticker symbol CMB if you want to look it up yourself. So, and then the next question is more like, what are your thoughts on Whirlpool? So for me, you look, Whirlpool is for me also a bit in the category of dead money. And that's actually all I want to say about. So ticker symbol WHR, I looked into it several times and I'm just simply not interested in them. They remind me my old dishwasher, and that says already enough. It always broke down. We've got a Bosch now. I prefer it much more. So.
Yeah, and that's my problem. I mentioned it briefly with Sembra there. Where's the competitive advantage here? I mean, they make home appliances, washing machines. Everyone knows Whirlpool for washing machines. These things are easily replicated. So what does Whirlpool do differently than Bosch or Samsung or any of the other ones that make washing machines? I just don't get it. And I struggle to invest in these type of companies because of that.
Well, come on, to its credit, it has a 5.8% yield. Yeah.
But what's its competitive advantage? That's the big question.
Yeah.
Look, I feel like this because I've seen this ticker come
And I
up
think they had a flat
lots.
dividend, right, over the last 2 years. I think is it that they didn't hike the dividend? I think hike the dividends. So
I can't remember, but I have seen it pop up quite a bit online purely because of the dividend yield. It's a yield chasing exercise. But for me, I struggle with these types of companies because, look, honestly, I could build a washing machine tomorrow. It's not that hard.
Yeah. I mean, it is much more than this. Also industrial, right? I must say, I know this from the oil and gas industry. It is a top-notch company. Like, well, let's say it's a top player. Let's say it like that. But for me, it has never attracted me. It gives a high yield. The dividend has been flat. It follows a pattern of many European companies. They don't cut the dividend, but they keep it flat from time to time. And I just don't. Yeah, simply said, Loic, I just don't have the conviction about Whirlpool. I think it could make a good investment case. It hasn't done from a share price anything in the last 4 or 5 years. I don't shy away from that. But then the question is like, what is the catalyst for this company that it could return to grow? Because if it can't grow, let's say its earnings and its cash flow over those years, then what is going to be different in the next year that makes you convinced that now is the time to buy? Yeah, because I'm quickly looking just also at the earnings and such over the last quarters. It's all flat, and yeah, it would need to do better than that.
Kim has asked us our thoughts on AFLAC, ticker symbol AFL.
I like it. Too expensive.
Yeah. The time to buy that was 2 or 3 years ago. We have to give Tiago some credit here because he beat that drum so hard. Tiago was on our show, obviously, and he's an active member of our group. But yeah, he spoke about AFLAC quite a bit. He also wrote a very in-depth article. Well, actually 3 articles on them, which is worth checking out. But yeah, great company, good exposure to Japan. But as you said, not at these prices.
No.
Mike. Did I pronounce Mache? What are your thoughts on Games Workshop?
I looked so often into this business because it's listed on the London Stock Exchange, but unfortunately, it doesn't have a stable dividend. So Games Workshop makes these little figures and such, right? These little game figures, and I think there's also licensing with some computer games or something like that. Very, very interesting business. You wouldn't expect it. So if you walk through the shopping streets and you see sometimes those shops with those tin soldiers kind of looking puppets everywhere and such. You think this is for geeks? Well, that's exactly what Games Workshop is about as well. And a very interesting one that showed over the years very good growth, high quality company. It just has a dividend policy which is not favorable to dividend growth investors. That's why you see inconsistent dividend payments, which is a pity. I think they have much more in shop for dividend growth investors, but yeah, they have not done it yet.
Richard Taylor has asked us about Enagas. He's asking, is this stock a no-brainer source for dividend portfolio for a soon-to-be retiree in the UK, or is the high yield potential trap? And he's also mentioned he's hurting from Walgreens. So look, full disclosure, I own Enagas. I bought Enagas towards the end of last year. They do have a dividend floor, which I believe is safe for another 2 years, if I remember correctly. And then after that, we don't know. So is it a no-brainer? I don't know. Look, it depends on your investment goals. What I'm worried about is that you mentioned you're hurting from Walgreens dividend cut, and I am as well. But what it feels like here is, okay, where do I put my money? I'm trying to recoup this, and you're putting it into a high yield, such as Enagas. That space is heavily regulated. We don't know what the Spanish government can do. It could cut that dividend in the morning if it wanted. I know Enagas have a floor there set. I believe it's safe. I believe it's safe for the next 2 or 3 years. Definitely believe it's safe. But
after that, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But as you say, we don't know what governments will do. We don't know what regulations will do. After that, it might not be safe. So in the short term, yes. In the medium to long term, I don't really know. It's trading at an attractive price. I think the yield is nearly above 10% at the moment. But my only word of warning is, if you are only investing in it because you got kicked in the ass by Walgreens, I would just take a step back and consider why you're investing in them. But yes, it's a good utility, but it comes with obviously the obvious risks with that.
I think it has an 11% yield right now, almost.
Wow, 11% yield. How sustainable is that long term as well? Possibly not. But they have given a floor. I think the floor is 170 or 172, in and around that. So,
yeah, good.
Kieran has asked us, 2 stocks that are a bit beaten down at the moment. Everybody's talking about them, it seems, is Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, ticker symbol MC.PA, and Starbucks. Are these moves over the top or golden opportunities to buy?
I don't see them as golden opportunities, but I would say this is the time to do your homework on these two tickers and figure out when you want to buy them, because they are coming into such a zone that you feel like, okay, this may be the time to start nibbling in.
Yeah, I agree. I think Starbucks struggling because of, is it McDonald's? McDonald's are in the coffee game now.
I don't know. I think Starbucks is trading more towards where it deserves to trade. In my opinion, it was always overvalued. And it's coming into a right zone now. I think the CEO is always doing a good job, this Howard Schultz. So, I think this is the time you can start doing the homework. And if it goes back up, you just have the joy of missing out on it.
Yeah. I think I've always shied away from actually doing my homework in Louis Vuitton because it was always so overpriced. It was clear it was so overpriced. But it's starting getting into the range where at least it becomes more interesting to deserve my time because it's more attainable. When it's at inflated values, there's no point. Because
I'm still annoyed that they cut the dividend during COVID.
Yeah,
a small one, but still enough to make me annoyed.
Just like Siemens. So yeah, that's it. That's the last question. I actually thought we had one more, but that's it. Thanks again for that. I would say Starbucks, I think Ian Luphook has plenty of videos on him. I think you've wrote stuff on them, so there's plenty of information on them. Louis Vuitton said haven't done enough on that to give you a proper answer. So let us know if you look into them and what you hear and what you think about them. And as for everyone else, thanks a million for your questions. We had quite a few today. Good way to kick off the year, I would say. And I'm super excited for this Italian company. So thanks so much for that. We'll see you all next week. Remember, both of us at Dividend Talk are not certified financial specialists through formal education. We are just two guys sharing our journey for inspiration and entertainment purposes. Hence, this is not investment advice. Although we do our best, we can't promise that the information discussed is always correct, nor appropriate for you or anybody else. We always recommend that you do your own due diligence and be accountable for your own choices. As we always say, you can't borrow conviction from others. Last but not least, by listening to our podcast, you agree to hold us harmless from any ramifications, financial or otherwise, that occur to you as a result of acting on information provided in this podcast.